Hi, and welcome to the third episode of our Minnesota PBIS PD Playback podcast, where yes, the voices may be digital, but the stories and practical stuff, that's all real, straight from our partners in schools, and our October 7th session titled PBIS TFI 3.0, What's New, What's Next, and What to Know First. I'm Erin and up here in the lovely northern region, and I've got my co-host Debbie Doran here from the Metro with me. Hey Debbie, how's your week going?
Hey, Erin. Hi, everyone. I'm doing great, and I'm excited to share what's new with the updated TFI 3.0. If you're not yet familiar with the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, think of it as your PBIS dashboard, a tool that helps teams see what's working well and where small adjustments can lead to big improvements in implementation.
For sure. So the biggest thing folks are going to notice when you pull up TFI 3.0, Tier 1 now has 20 questions. It used to be 15. I know at first glance that just seems like, yikes, is that going to create more work? But honestly, it's about getting a better picture of what's really happening in your building. The crosswalk in the manual helps show where the questions changed or moved. And there's way more on supporting mental health, equitable practices, aligning practices in the classroom, just like more specifics all around.
Yeah, and then the scoring. The move from that 3-point scale, which basically had you decide yes, no, or maybe about things being in place and implemented, to a new 5-point one is, well, kind of a game changer for teams. You can finally express those almost there, but not quite moments. It opens it up for more back and forth and honestly more reality checks about strengths and struggles. The numbers might look different now, though, like a 70% on TFI 2.1 might land you down at 44% in 3.0. And I can just picture teams going like, what? But the scoring is just different. It doesn't mean things slipped backwards.
Exactly. I mean, if you walk into a staff meeting and tell everyone the number dropped, it can sound scary, but it's not the same scale, and you really have to frame it as a new baseline. We'll talk more about how to do that with staff, but I want to talk about the language piece for a minute because I think it's bigger than it sounds. TFI 3.0 has updated terms, like instead of just inappropriate behavior, you'll see contextually inappropriate behavior. That little word, contextually, actually means so much, and it's way more inclusive. Like, is running inappropriate during math? Yep. During recess, that's, totally fine.
Absolutely. I found myself having to stop and double check. Are we thinking about student identity, differences in age, or cultural context? The new language nudges staff to step back, ask, is this about the environment or about expectations we haven't taught clearly? Or assume students should know what's expected as they go from teacher to teacher. And it also pushes us as PBIS coaches to work this into our team convos, not just going with what's always been the rule. And hey, as someone who's done this for a while, those habits are tough to shake off.
Yeah, for sure. It feels like a lot at first, but that intentional process is the point. It's more thoughtful now, more supportive of every student's experience, and way less about catching kids and more about teaching, This is adult-facing work for the benefits of students and school community.
Totally. And if this all feels a little overwhelming or like a pile of new to your team, you're not alone. This is meant to be a reset, not an overnight fix. Choose a pace that gives your school some space to learn, reflect, and grow, just like we ask of our students, right? So, if you're ready to update your TFI process, there's one step you don't want to skip: shared definitions and calibration. Taking a few minutes to agree on what key terms mean, like behavior-specific praise, can save a lot of confusion later. Teams can get tripped up when everyone assumes they're talking about the same thing. Getting that shared understanding up front isn't just good practice. It's an important step toward equity and consistency.
That's the thing. Sometimes filling out the TFI is seen as a quick checklist, but it's always been about having conversations to level the playing field for all to be successful. Now, having that language or definition alignment, it's like step one. The walkthrough tools, the ones in the manual, are super useful. That glossary is not just for show. Teams should sit down and actually agree on what things mean in their own building. Like, ask 3 staff what contextually inappropriate means. You will most likely get 3 different answers unless you really talk it through, and those scenarios make all the difference.
Absolutely, and that means walkthroughs are more than a quick glance. They actually do take longer now, which is honestly time well spent. One team used a calibration activity, mock scoring a classroom routine, half rated it a 2, half a 4, and the discussion that followed was gold. It helped everyone reset expectations and find those real aha moments together.
Yeah, I've experienced the same thing. It's awkward at first. But letting people ask, wait, why did you give that a 3? Brings out those invisible beliefs and gets real consensus building. You can't do meaningful data work if everyone's working off slightly different definitions, especially with new terms like frequency of acknowledgement. That's why something like a calibration round is key, even if it feels, I don't know, clunky.
And I think sometimes we underestimate the value of including a variety of adults' roles in the building and student voices during walkthroughs. There's just something about hearing how routines land for students compared to what adults think they see. The discussion makes those examples and evidence richer, not just more complicated.
Exactly. When teams bring in staff and student perspectives, the conversation gets so much better. And honestly, if you're not sure where to start, grab the walkthrough form and do those mini calibration rounds. The more perspectives, the more useful those numbers end up being. It's worth the extra few minutes, I promise. Shifting gears, the part people often worry about most, explaining these new numbers to your admin, district, or just your own team members. I can't tell you how many emails I've answered about whether last year's and this year's TFI results can be compared. Spoiler alert, they really can't. 2.1 and 3.0 don't match up, but you can talk through the differences and use it to decide what's bringing the most value to your action planning.
Totally. Teams get nervous when their percent fidelity drops on paper, and it's easy to worry the sky is falling when really it's a recalibration. Set this up from the start as a baseline year. That's what we tell our teams. Frame it as a learning year, not a test of whether you're doing better or worse than last year.
That's so important. One best practice we talk about a lot is still pairing the TFI with the self-assessment survey, version 4.0. The key is getting most of your staff on board, at least 80% if you can, so you have a reliable, broad picture of what's working in PBIS and where to focus efforts. It's not just chasing numbers, but using them for real insight.
And don't forget, first step with new TFI scores is always bringing them to your PBIS or leadership team for discussion before results go out wider. Teams that summarize both strengths and challenges tend to get way more trust and honest input from staff. Nobody likes feeling like they're just being measured, but people are open when you invite them into the learning process. And that takes some preparation by the team.
That's right. And we've had some schools wait until a natural break, like the end of the calendar year, or score only the 2.1 while reading comparables on the 3.0 while you get ready to transition and maybe don't start until next fall. Sometimes it's okay to go slow, to go fast. You just want everyone to feel ready to start strong and fresh instead of being rushed or surprised.
Then some teams just jump in mid-year. They're ready. And honestly, some love having those conversations you can really get into, even if it's more time-consuming at first. It's about reading your team and giving everyone a chance to weigh the options, rather than making it a top-down call.
No matter what you choose, be upfront with your staff and leadership about what the new data means, and maybe more importantly, what it doesn't. This transition should be about growth, flexibility, and learning together, not about chasing perfect numbers. Keeping things transparent keeps people engaged.
That's really the biggest takeaway. The rollout isn't a finish line. It's an invitation to reflect and learn. Use your external coaches like us for support and resources. Keep revisiting the walkthrough and summary forms. And this is key. Celebrate the wins and the honest dialogue. And Erin, I always walk away from these chats feeling inspired and making room for efficiencies that will give us more wow for the work. Thanks for teaming up with me again.
You too, Debbie, and thanks everyone for listening in. If you're thinking of moving from the TFI 2.1 to the TFI 3.0 and feeling a little hesitant, you're in good company. It's a learning curve, but we'll keep bringing you these conversations as we all go. See you next episode, Debbie.
Bye, Erin, and bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for more PBI stories next time.